And it's recording.
Hi class, we are group 3 and for our government agency we have chosen a Federal Emergency Management Agency known as FEMA. Our group is composed of 4 members. My name is Jimena Ruiz.
I'm Jasmine Garcia.
I am Pedro Rangel.
And I'm Jesus Diaz.
When nature unleashes its fury, communities rise stronger together. From hurricanes that flood homes and uproot lives to wildfires that turn forests into ashes, destruction seems to leave no hope behind. Tornadoes twist through towns, leaving debris in their wake. Earthquakes shake the very ground we stand on, and winter storms blanket everything in a chilling silence. We've seen Hurricane Harvey devastate Texas in 2017, wildfires rage across California, and tornadoes tear through the Midwest. Each disaster leaves a mark, a scar on the landscape and on our hearts. But in every storm there's a silver lining. When the skies clear, the true strength of humanity shines through. Volunteers distribute food and water to those in need. Emergency responders bravely rescue individuals trapped by the chaos. Neighbors come together, helping each other rebuild what was lost. Shelters open their doors, offering warmth and safety to those displaced. Fundraising events and charity drives bring communities together in the spirit of giving. As Helen Keller once said, "Alone we can do so little, together we can do so much." These moments of unity and resilience are what define us. Together we rebuild, together we heal. Thank you to all the heroes who make recovery possible. Support disaster relief efforts. Visit website organization. Be the difference. When nature unleashes
Agency history and background. FEMA's history dates back to the first Federal Disaster Relief and Legislative Act in 1803, which was enacted following a devastating fire in Portsmouth, New Hampshire. However, the agency as we know it today was officially established on April 1st, 1979, when President Carter signed the Executive Order 12-127. Through Executive Order 12-148 on July 28, 1979, President Carter gave FEMA the dual mission of emergency management and civil defense. And a little on the FEMA's evolution, the Stafford Act in 1988 established the framework for disaster response and recovery through presidential disasters declarations. Following the 9/11 in 2001, FEMA became part of the Department of Homeland Security in 2003. The Post-Katrina Emergency Management Reform Act of 2006 established FEMA as a distinct agency within the Department of Homeland Security and designated the FEMA administrator as the principal advisor to the President on emergency management. The Sandy Recovery Improvement Act of 2013 streamlined public infrastructure recovery and allowed federally recognized troops to request presidential declaration directly. The Disaster Recovery Reform Act of 2018 expanded FEMA's authorities and emphasized the investment in mitigation. Agency's missions and goals. FEMA's core mission is very simple. Their mission is to help before, during, and after the disasters. FEMA's goals are to instill equity and foundation of emergency management. Disasters impact people and communities differently. Like every disaster occurs within a unique context based on community, geographic, demographic, political, historical, and cultural characteristics. So this unique context require tailored solutions that are designed to meet their unique needs. The Stanford Act requires FEMA assistance be delivered and equitable manner without discrimination on the grounds of race, color, religion, nationality, sex, age, disability, language accessibility, or economic status. The agency's second goal is to lead whole of community in climate resilience. Climate change represents a profound crisis for the nation, making natural disasters more frequent, more intense, and more destructive. The growing severity of disasters increases the time it takes for communities to recover, a process that can further complicate by repeat events in areas already struggling to bounce back. Through close collaboration with federal, state, local, tribal, and territory governments, community-based organizations, and the private sector, FEMA takes people's first approach to increase climate literacy and develop tools and allocate resources informed by future risk estimates to target investments to create more equitable and resilient nation. The agency demonstrates its commitment to climate change mitigation strategies with its facilities. And then FEMA's third goal is to promote and sustain a ready FEMA and prepared nation. The 2017 hurricanes and wildfires mark a change disaster operations tempo. For example, Hurricane Harvey here in Houston, and when I was back in Puerto Rico, Hurricane Maria, also in 2017. So compared to the year preceding 2017, for the past 4 years, FEMA has had more than twice as many staff deployed every day. By November 2020, FEMA was managing 6 times as many Stanford Acts events, and responses to fire incidents were up 120% across the nation. This increased frequency, severity, and complexity has heightened demands on FEMA and on other larger emergency management community. To adapt to the trend, FEMA is trying to expand its approach to agency readiness and to national preparedness by increasing the nation's overall emergency management capabilities at levels of government as well as private sector, the nonprofit sector, and among individuals. Aligning FEMA's with readiness to these targets ensures that agencies that are continuously supporting the needs and priorities identified by whole community partners, in addition to continuity of government across hazards. For the primary functions, as I mentioned, FEMA's core mission is to help before, during, and after the disasters. So the primary functions of the agency before disaster is to promote preparedness through community engagement, training, and education. They manage the National Flood Insurance Program for people that are interested in getting a flood insurance policy prior to the disaster. They help communities determine flood risk and provide protection tools. They support community resilience through grant programs, and they provide training and education for disaster preparation. During the disasters, the agency coordinates federal response to disasters and receive a presidential disaster declaration. They manage the disaster declaration process. They provide individual assistance to affected citizens. They also offer public assistance through supplemental grants to state, tribal, territorial, and local governments. They deploy disaster survivors assistance teams, and these teams, they go door to door to help disaster survivors and in impacted communities and help them apply for assistance they provide. They also operate disaster recovery centers, and these centers are accessible facility and mobile offices in convenient areas for survivors. That is where people go to register for the programs they offer, to get like status on their cases, to get answers, or just to solve their problems in the middle of these disasters. And after disasters, the agency supports states, local, tribal, and territorial government officials in managing community recovery. They implement the National Disaster Recovery Framework, and this is when they enable the whole community approach and allowed agencies to coordinate with each other to provide communities and unified federal assistance as quickly and as effective as possible. They help communities rebuild stronger through mitigation projects. The agency also provides funding through their hazard mitigation grant program for risk reduction projects like planning and enforcement, flood protection, and retrofitting and constructions.
Okay. The organizational structure, since we've learned the FEMA is a federal agency within the U.S. Department of Homeland Security, which means the headquarters is in Washington, D.C., where the Office of Administrator and various other program offices are located. There are 10 regional offices that work directly with states, territories, and tribes. The field offices that manage disaster response and recovery and disaster locations, and there are various warehouses and staging areas throughout the country. The FEMA administrator reports directly to the Department of Homeland Security Secretary. The administrator also has a direct line of access to the U.S. President during periods of disaster response. When the president approves an emergency or major disaster declaration, FEMA deploys personnel into the field, and upon arrival, the public assistance staff sets up an organized command structure. The public assistance field staff work out of the Joint Field Office, which is FEMA's main operating facility at a disaster or an area field office. The field staff only work on the disaster for which that they are deployed. The Office of Administrator The Office of Administrator contains program offices that directly support the administrator and deputy administrator in the performance of their duties, as well as several program offices that provide agency-wide coordination, guidance, and oversight on key topics. The Chief Counsel is responsible for ensuring that the agencies carry out its responsibilities and advising on policies and regulations and representing the agency in litigation. The mission support delivers quality, mission-focused business excellence across 5 lines of business, which include human resources, information technology, facilities, and administrative services, security, and procurement. The regional offices consist of 10 regions in the continental U.S. and territories, and ours is Region 6, which would cover Arkansas, Louisiana, New Mexico, Oklahoma, Texas, and 68 tribal nations. The resilience prepares communities, reduces suffering, and speeds up the recovery. The response and recovery team provides guidance, leadership, and oversight to build, sustain, and improve the coordination and delivery of support to citizens and state, local, tribal, and territorial governments to save lives, reduce the suffering, protect people's property, and recover from all hazards. The U.S. Fire Administration supports and strengthens the fire and emergency medical services and stakeholders to prepare for events, mitigate, and respond to all hazards. The organizational structure in the field, which would be the program delivery manager, the site inspector, the program delivery task force leader, the public assistance group supervisor, infrastructure brand director, environmental and historic preservation specialist, which they use to assess the agency's effectiveness in fulfilling its mission and objective. And you can see here in this chart how the organization is in levels of, I guess, importance that people are. And then leadership and key departments, which would be the Office of Administrator, the Chief Counsel, Mission Support, Regional Offices, Reliance, Response and Recovery, and U.S. Fire Administration. The objectives and effectiveness of FEMA. Their objectives are to reduce loss of life and property, minimize suffering and disruption that is caused by disasters, provide rapid and effective responses and of recovery of people's property, and is also to enhance the nation's ability to anticipate, prepare for, and mitigate the impact of disasters, provide rapid and effective federal support during disasters to save lives, protect people's property, and ensure public safety. It also helps communities and individuals rebuild after disasters and restore normalcy as quick as possible. FEMA has shown substantial growth in its ability to prepare for, respond to, and recover from disasters. To improve its full effectiveness, FEMA must prioritize equitable disaster aid distribution, enhance public awareness and local government capacity, and also invest in long-term climate adaptation and resilience to fully be as effective as it can be.
Hello, everyone. Like I stated, my name is Pedro, and today I'll be covering down on some points, but I will be focusing on Harvey and COVID as examples for FEMA's preparations, so that way we are able to understand FEMA's impact better. So to start off, I can say let's start with FEMA's impact on stakeholders. The stakeholders for FEMA will be public, government entities, and other organizations. So the public. The FEMA provides assistance to individuals and communities through financial aid services and disaster survivors. So how does FEMA do this? FEMA's individual assistance program has provided financial aid and temporary housing for thousands of people that were affected in Hurricane Harvey back in 2017. Over 1.6 billion individual aid was distributed to help survivors rebuild their lives. Um, the challenge with this was that many residents reported delays in receiving assistance, particularly low-income families in underrepresented neighborhoods. So this is basically creates an impact, a negative impact with the public. So like we say, like we can see the delay and inefficiencies of aid distribution can break the public's trust. Government entities. The government entities that FEMA collaborates with are state and local governments, and this is to enhance disaster preparedness and response. FEMA has partnered with local governments to coordinate rescue efforts, supply distribution, and evacuation plans during Harvey, um, during Harvey and COVID. So I can speak from experience because I have worked with FEMA in the past doing natural disasters through the National Guard. So the National Guard, whenever it's deployed as a state, it will be state government. So as the state, as a National Guard, you work with alongside FEMA to be able to focus on the affected groups. So another example is through government entities will be that FEMA has worked with the city of Houston to set up shelters and locations through Georgia Brown Convention Center, accommodating like thousands of evacuees during Harvey. Other organizations that FEMA works with will be nonprofits, private sectors, entities, and community organizations. For example, now FEMA has collaborated with nonprofits such as Red Cross and private companies. So going back to COVID, FEMA has collaborated with Red Cross to set up points of vaccinations, send points um, for quarantine points, and FEMA has done those efforts by collaborating with the Red Cross. Uh, Another example for private sectors is FEMA has worked with Walmart and Home Depot to provide emergency supplies to rebuild infrastructures during Harvey. Some of the challenges have come from the slow approval of reimbursement and which have impacted relief timelines. Areas areas for improvement. So like I stated before, FEMA has worked alongside other entities. But the issue with FEMA has been that for example, during Hurricane Harvey, FEMA Public Assistance Program funded the restoration of Houston's critical infrastructure, including roads, schools, and hospitals. But those have been successful programs for FEMA. They also contributed to clean up 126,000 tons of debris in the Harris County, ensuring quicker community recovery. The budgetary issues have come alongside whenever, for example, during Hurricane Harvey, when people were requesting funds, FEMA was taking a while to allocate the funds because they didn't have them available. Uh, I can uh, I can also speak from that side of experience, uh, since I do have a business, construction business, and we were very busy during the Harvey time. I had clients that were applying for funds so that they can get their houses fixed and even get their houses lifted above the water level. So people were taking FEMA was taking a while to approve those funds because the budget or the funds weren't there. So this is where the budgetary issues come along, and that's also where controversy starts because people think that FEMA should have the funds available at all times, ready for approval. And this is where people start pointing fingers at FEMA, talking about corruption and other cases like that, saying that the funds have been misused. But I think it comes to the point where it hasn't been budgeted properly. So this is where you start losing trust in FEMA, or people has lost trust in FEMA. So public policy on FEMA's operations. So we can see that there has been there has specifically been a legislation, it's called the Robert T. Stafford Act, that was placed specifically for FEMA. So what this Stafford Act does, it's a federal law that establishes the legal authority for the Federal Emergency Management Agency, FEMA, to manage disasters assistance. So what it does, it authorizes presidential declarations, it outlines federal responses, it establishes FEMA's role, and it provides assistance. It provides assistance through food, shelter, financial assistance, of physical damage repair, debris removal, distribution of vital supplies. The Robert T. Stafford Act has provided FEMA with the authority to declare disasters and coordinate federal resources. For example, in 2020, this act allowed the federal government to support state efforts during the COVID-19 pandemic, including deploying funds for medical supplies and hospital expansions. For example, this act enabled FEMA to distribute billions in federal grants to rebuild Houston's infrastructure during Harvey as well. So the policy priorities. Hurricane Harvey underscored the importance of resilience-focused policies, leading to the initiative like the Building Resilient Infrastructure and Communities BRIC program. For example, post-Harvey, FEMA worked with Houston and fund flood migration projects, including drainage and improvements and bayou expansions. So same thing. I can speak that from experience because my My neighborhood was affected by Harvey back in 2017, and the government and alongside FEMA, they created policies to reorganize the flood zones. So they reorganized the flood zones, allowing for the government to allocate funds to build flood zones. So they were allocating areas for flood prevention. The public policy challenges have been the National Flood Insurance Program and NFIP became focal point post-Harvey. Many Houstonians without flood insurance struggle to recover, sparking debates about mandatory coverage in flood-prone areas.
Evaluation of public perception. The public's perception of FEMA has been mixed, as there have been times where it has been praised and times where it's been criticized. Recently, public perception of the agency has been mixed following the 2024 hurricane season, with hurricanes such as Milton and Helene. FEMA has been praised for how fast they allocated resources to the areas affected as they worked alongside state and local officials. However, the agency has also improved its perception by dismissing misinformation and making their application for assistance much more accessible. However, they have also faced criticism for inequities on how these resources were allocated to the affected, as well as some areas facing delays in receiving aid. This is also the case for past events like Katrina, where FEMA was critically criticized for having delayed action, mismanagement of resources, and lack of coordination. Clearly, they have had a great issue with being transparent with the public, as well as maintaining any trust. Communication and being transparent with their issues/problems has led to a mixed perception, with it leaning heavier towards negative after events such as the hurricane season. Recent reports. Recent reports show that FEMA has been active in deploying resources/personnel to assist areas that were affected by Milton and Helene. $860 million were allocated for disaster relief to remove debris, provide housing assistance, and provide essential supplies. They received praise for their rapid response, but have also faced criticism for the delays to rural areas and marginalized communities. FEMA has also have made improvements in addressing inequities in their resource distribution due to its Community Disaster Resilience Zones initiative, which focuses on directing resources to the most vulnerable communities ahead of a disaster. However, it was revealed in a press conference that they are still facing ongoing challenges to ensure consistent support in diverse regions. FEMA has also improved its digital platforms and mobile applications for disaster aid registration, leading to praise. They have made so much process to make it more accessible for those in underserved communities, with reports showing that FEMA has reduced processing times for aid applications since implementing these new systems.
Conclusion. The key strengths: FEMA has coordinated response during natural disasters that has provided critical aid to Houston and other states, restoring infrastructure and funding long-term recovery projects. The key challenges have been delays in aid distribution, funding limitations, and inequitable recovery efforts highlighted areas for improvement. Public policy impact has been the legislative frameworks and funding mechanisms have greatly influenced FEMA's response capacity during natural disasters, emphasizing the need for pre-allocated disasters funds and the need for resilience policy. And from one Houstonian to another, I want to leave you with one question. How has FEMA impacted your life?